Hey everybody, welcome back. If you've seen the last few videos, I hope you're having a great morning, afternoon, evening, whenever you're watching this. I am currently finishing up my first week of my second session studying, so fourth week total in Stockholm. Going to Croatia next week, and then I'm going to finish most of the novels I want to talk about for next video. I probably won't be able to film, so I wanted to do a little short story video before I left, and that's what this is. I don't know how informative it'll be. Short stories are a little bit harder to talk about, I think, and I'm completely lying because I have entire courses where we just talk about short stories. But I think that with a novel, you spend so much time with it, you form so many opinions. With a song, it's so short, you listen over and over and over and over again to the lyrics. And with short stories, it's all about the reading experience. So if you don't take anything away from this, because I'm just babbling incoherently because I don't remember everything about the story that I loved, just know that these are really cool reading experiences, all I think for different reasons. I've read them all in the last month and a half or so, and I tried to pick ones that kind of complement each other well as in terms of like reading them for different reasons. They all have a different like really cool factor about them. And so yeah, that's the plan. I've obviously talked about short stories a bit on the channel. George Saunders, Alice Munro. I mentioned I was reading Walk the Blue Fields by Keegan. This has been a great collection. I've got one story left. I'll talk about this one and this other short story collection, What We Talk About When We Talk About Love by Raymond Carver, and I'm really excited for that. So those will be in the next video with the Murakami and the Zadie Smith books, and I'll probably talk about one story from each today, since they make up so many of the stories I have been reading. But the first one I want to start with is In the Cemetery Where Al Jolson is Buried by Amy Hempel. And this is a story that I read because I was reading a talk on dialogue by Pam Houston. I was listening to a talk about dialogue by Pam Houston, which was recommended by my creative writing teacher, and she was like, this story, you've got to read this one if you're looking to improve your dialogue. And so I did that. It's just incredible. I would say the thing that makes this story great, because I mentioned they all have a different killer aspect to them, is the way that the beginning ties in with the end. So the story is about two girls. One is sick in the hospital and one is there with her. And let me pull this up real quick. And the beginning line is, "Tell me things I won't mind forgetting," she said. "Make it useless stuff or skip it." And the girl who's with the one in the hospital, who seems to know she's going to die, is telling her random facts. I told her insects fly in the rain, missing every drop, never getting wet. I told her no one in America owned a tape recorder before Bing Crosby. On and on and on. And this story is really about the experience that the reader has, as opposed to, formal elements of plot structure and rules for dialogue. It's just a beautiful story, reads really well, and the end is a gut punch. And that's all I can really say on this. I really don't want to spoil anything, but it's a great story, would highly recommend. I'm not sure where I found this on Fictionaut. So that's where you can find In the Cemetery Where Al Jolson is Buried by Amy Hempel. Really great story. Let me know what you think, especially the ending, because it's really cool, and I don't really know anybody that's read this story. It's not one I've discussed in a course or anything. So yeah, let me know what you think. And I mentioned that I don't even know if I said it. She has very stripped back style. Not all of the rules, and it's all about the reader's experience, which is really how Raymond Carver writes. I think. I've read a couple of those stories for class, a couple here, and the one I want to talk about today is Why Don't You Dance, the very first story here, which I have read before, and is a crazy idea. It's a guy who's moved his bed, his TV, his coffee table, his living room setup all into his front yard, and two people, the boy and the girl they're called, but they're a married or engaged couple, young and in love, I guess, but come by, think it's like a yard sale, have an interaction with him. None of it really makes any sense, but there's all these undertones where, I'll read one from the beginning because I won't spoil anything. This is kind of the last, kind of the first one. Except for that, things look much the way they had in the bedroom. Nightstand and reading lamp on his side of the bed, nightstand and reading lamp on her side. his side, her side. He considered this as he sipped the whiskey. There's a lot of considering, or where you just can't tell what the people are thinking exactly. It's a very short story. Definitely check it out. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to read the ending. I don't know. It tries to grab at something that you don't even understand is really there. You know what I mean? I sound so stupid and probably pretentious right now, but that's the idea of the story. I mean, he even kind of says it towards the end. The story is tugging at something, and you can kind of, like, in your mind, you understand it, but you can't express it through words, and he is expressing it through words, but he's not really, he never brings up, I don't know. That's the beauty of a Raymond Carver story. I mean, some of the other ones were like that. Mr. Coffee and Mr. Fix-It was like that. I mean, that's just how he writes, and it takes such skill to do that, and the way he cranks out these like little 2-3 pager stories that have so much unsaid inside of them, it's almost like there's more to what isn't there than what is. I don't know if that makes any sense, but yeah. Anyways, if neither of those explanations for either of those stories make sense, and if none of the rest of the ones do, just know that I'm sure you'll like most of these. This one maybe is a little bit of a weirder one. Ashleigh Bryant Phillips is someone I heard of first in a creative writing class at Wisconsin, and she grew up in the South. I'm just trying to I listened to a podcast with her recently. She grew up in the South, like on the Virginia border or something like that. Kind of came to college and wanted to write about back home, to kind of like the world that she saw in college was entirely different from back home, and she felt like her voice needed to be out there because there's so many of the same kind of voices, which is really interesting. I mean, yeah, I can't relate to a lot of her experiences, I'm sure, and I've only read 2 stories of hers now, but I am going to order the Sleepovers collection, which is her first story collection, maybe like 2019, 2020, I don't know the year, but I'm sure she has more coming out soon, but she's a great writer, and I really enjoy her stuff. I don't know how to describe the style. It's kind of it flows beautifully, but like funny in a way, if that makes sense. I don't know. I mean, so this one is called Genesis. I don't know if I said that. Genesis by Ashleigh Bryant Phillips, and it's a political story. I usually don't enjoy, just in general, stories talking about like the political figures nowadays, if that makes sense. This one doesn't actually, I forget if it brings it up until the very end. It might not. But basically, what she saw on this podcast, I should say the name if I'm gonna talk about it nonstop. Was it Other People with Brad Listy? That's the one I was listening to. And it was pretty interesting. I haven't finished it yet, but I think that's where she mentioned this, and it's really good. I first read it simply because she posted on Instagram like this was not getting accepted anywhere, thanks to Strange Matters, which is the magazine where it was published, for taking a chance or whatever. And so I was like, well, sounds interesting. None of her stories seemed that weird before, so I was like, oh, seems interesting, especially because she's been published in so many places. You would think places would be eager to get her stuff. But the way the story goes, the narrator has gotten her MFA in fiction, no job, goes home, hangs out with an old friend. Old friend used to babysit for this family. This thing happened to this family. And they don't know what happened to the members of the family, but the narrator begins to imagine what happened to this little girl. And what she did with her life. I think that Ashleigh Bryant Phillips in the story or on the podcast mentioned that she got the idea for the story because this might be kind of a spoiler, but not really. She saw somebody back home post a picture of all their all the 6-year-old kids in this neighborhood at a pool party, birthday party, with Donald Trump's face everywhere. Now, it's obviously making a kind of political statement. I don't even think it matters like what you think. It's very weird to have 6-year-olds to push your agenda onto 6-year-olds and post that all over the place. I mean, they don't know what's going on. You're basically worshiping a political figure, and I think what she's trying to get here is what leads somebody to put all their problems onto a political figure and be like, that person's going to solve everything for me. I think that's, she didn't say that. That's what I took from it and thought was really interesting. It's a little bit of a kind of, it's a very different story, but it's awesome. I really liked it. I sent it to my dad. He was like, it's cool, but I don't think he loved it. So check it out. It's not long. I really enjoyed it and would highly recommend. I love when there's something new. I think that original writing is the best, and she's not trying to be anybody else and doing her thing, and I think it's awesome. I can't wait to see more what she does in the future. So yeah, the fourth one I'm going to talk about is Enemies by Anton Chekhov. This one, I've read a lot of Chekhov in the different literature and translation courses I've taken, Russian courses. My favorite's probably The Lady with the Lapdog or Lady with Little Dog, depending on the translation you read. But this one, Enemies, is another great example of Chekhov's strengths. And I read it because George Saunders, who does Story Club, as I mentioned before, his like Substack, he will send out stories and like different stories and then kind of teach them in different sections. So he usually puts out like one, he'll like send the story the week before, and then he'll do like 3 separate posts about the story, like part 1, part 2, part 3 over 3 weeks. And it's really cool. It's an awesome experience. I feel like this is like the 2 out of 3 videos I've told people to pay George Saunders their money. But again, it's really great, and I really enjoy it. Now, Enemies is not my favorite story by no means, but it is, if you like Chekhov, you'll like it, and I liked it. And it's a great example of a story that is written, and I guess this could be a good video for writers too, because it shows so many different ways you could go about a story. And maybe this is more of an old school way of writing. I don't really think so, because I think people still do this. I mean, Saunders still does it today. But Chekhov takes a problem, which here the problem is the doctor's child, 6-year-old child has died, the only doctor in the town. And somebody shows up at his door with a problem. And as you continue on, it's like, oh, well, now there's this. Oh, now there's this. Oh, now there's this. And it becomes this whole massive thing. And the way he expands, I don't even know how you come up with all the ideas he comes up with. Let alone, I mean, how many stories did he write? Bajillions. And it's just thing after thing after thing. It's just really excellent, the way he writes. And that was one of my favorite parts of A Swim in the Pond in the Rain by Saunders, is him talking about Chekhov and how he really approaches that yes and question that writers really need to ask their stories. It seems like he never stops asking it. It just goes on and on and on. And I don't mean that as in the story drags. I just mean it just shocks you over and over again. So really cool. Enemies by Anton Chekhov. The thing I liked the best was the end, and how I'm trying not to spoil anything here with any of these stories. I don't think I am, but maybe. So if you want to just read them, I'm sure I'll have the list down below in the description. But in the end, somebody forms like a cold, hard opinion about an entire group of people based on their experience with this one person in a moment where they were grieving or upset. And I think the problem he's trying to address is why is that happening? And Saunders expands on that further in the first Substack post, which I thought was really interesting. I don't know. It's really cool. The ending's great. Beginning's great. Again, stacking layer on layer on layer. More of formal rule following in a way. Not that he isn't insanely creative, obviously. It's a really beautiful story. So, Enemies by Anton Chekhov. What do we got? So, In the Cemetery, Why Don't You Dance, Genesis, Enemies. The fifth one I will talk about is The Long and Painful Death by Claire Keegan. I mean, this is just going to be praise for her writing. I mean, the story, I think you can find all of these online. I'm not sure about the Claire Keegan one, so sorry about that. Again, I'd highly, highly recommend getting this collection. If I can find it, I will link it below. But all the other ones some might be in the New Yorker, but most of them will be available somewhere. So, let me see with this story. I wasn't even looking at the right one. So, oh look, there's Chekhov. Somebody mentioned Chekhov. The Long and Painful Death is about a woman, a writer, who travels to this famous writer's house who's long gone, and they give like 2-week stays at a time to different writers, I guess, at this estate. And then this German professor who's at the university who comes by to see the house. And I guess the point of the story might be kind of similar to the Chekhov one. It has to do with how judgmental people can be, or maybe how fixed in their ideas they are, even before they meet you. You're all the same, you're all... And that's pretty much all I can say. I mean, so much of her writing is maybe a little different. It's not always... It is event-based, but you're really in the reading and in the writing, and she is so talented. I mean, I mentioned that there was one story I didn't love. I think it was because the dialogue was so Irish, maybe. I mean, that I just didn't understand what they were saying. Like, it just didn't make sense to me, the writing, and I chalked that up to, I mean, she's not going to write a story that doesn't make sense, you know what I mean? But there were a lot of like me's, and I don't know. There usually is, and I can understand it, but the one story, which I don't remember the name of, I'll talk about it next video, I just didn't enjoy. But all the other ones have been amazing. My favorite one is actually not this one, it's a different one, but that one's super long. So this is one that I would highly recommend reading, Long and Painful Death. Just the beauty of feeling she evokes inside of the reader, that through the feelings of the narrator, the way she describes things, scenery, the dialogue, even though it is funky in a different way in each story, like she's trying to capture a unique and interesting person. It's just a really, really beautiful story. She's just a really, really beautiful writer, and I'm going to buy everything of hers. I mean, I mentioned I have small things like these, which I didn't take with. I figured I would bring something longer, just because of the lack of space I have. But I'll read that. So Late in the Day. I mean, she is incredible, and becoming one of my favorite writers. I mean, that's the first thing of hers I read, but she's great. So for the last story, I have Show Don't Tell by Curtis Sittenfeld. This is one of the older ones, and I'm not going to remember everything about it. The basic premise is, actually, this is funny. I was talking to my creative writing teacher about, he's a published author, he's a great writer, he's got a novel coming out soon, which maybe I'll talk about if he lets me, with a pretty big publishing company too, so I'm excited for that. But anyway, I'm getting off track. I was talking with him about MFA programs and different ones and what's important, and the hotshot famous author teachers versus these smaller programs, more funding and all this different stuff, and he obviously gave me a lot of great information, but at the end he was like, you should read this short story. This is like the most realistic thing when it comes to an MFA program. So Show Don't Tell by Curtis Sittenfeld. It's in the New Yorker, and it has a thread kind of spinning around it, which is the kind of unique aspect about this one, and that's funding for the MFA program. Was she at Iowa? I don't remember. I think it's Curtis Sittenfeld maybe went to Iowa, and it's based on that. And the whole time she's worried about this funding. If she's going to get the higher funding, like more money, she's going to get lower. Who's a better writer? Who's a worse writer? All the drama that goes on between the writers there. Very mundane day-to-day stuff with this like one exciting aspect, which is she going to get the most money possible? Is she going to have to teach the more interesting classes, or is she going to have to teach the classes that everybody hates teaching? So it kind of revolves around that like really exciting aspect. But the beauty of the story and the actual like exciting stuff is in the day-to-day stuff, the parties she goes to, the people she talks with. Again, I don't remember all the details. I have the story here, but I just want to say read that one. It's a little bit longer. Great story. I'm not going to like rank them in terms of favorites, but I really enjoyed that one. Yeah, so that's pretty much all I have to say about these. I hope this wasn't like a useless video, but I mean, all these stories are great. I highly recommend reading them. I did enjoy talking about them. I hope you guys got something from this. I will be back with all the novel talk, many books, after I get back from Croatia in about a week or so. And yeah, I just want to say thank you again to everybody who's been checking out the videos, leaving comments. It's been really cool to hear from everyone, especially people sharing, personal anecdotes and favorite stories and books. And this has just been a really cool thing. Again, I never thought people would really watch these videos, and so I'm really thankful, and that's why I just kind of wanted to put out this short one. Again, hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys have a great weekend. Hopefully I get this out by then, and yeah, see you soon.